In an unexpected defeat, House Republicans failed to pass impeachment articles against Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas after internal divisions caused them to miss the mark by just one vote. 3 Republicans, Colorado's Ken Buck, Wisconsin's Mike Gallagher, and California's Tom McClintock, joined Democrats to vote against the resolution. A 4th Republican, Utah's Blake Moore, joined the no side to allow the House GOP to bring up the vote again later. Speaker Mike Johnson has vowed to bring the articles back to the floor.
Meanwhile, Senate Republicans seem to have abandoned the bipartisan border bill, though some are asking how it even happened in the first place. Border reporter Julio Rosas posted on X that a Border Patrol source said the border deal is a disaster, and we are wondering what Brandon Judd, head of the Border Patrol Union, sold us out for. None of the Border Patrol agents are happy with his statement, and the Biden administration is taking an interesting tack, blaming Trump for the current issues on the border. Take a look.
Every day between now and November, the American people are going to know that the only reason the border is not secure is Donald Trump and his MAGA Republican friends.
White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre tried to push the same line as Fox News' Peter Doocy pushed her on the border issue during a press conference. Let's watch.
You guys talk a lot, including today, about how the border wouldn't be such a big deal if Congress would have just passed your immigration bill on day one. Who was in charge of Congress on day one?
So it's been 3 years. It's been three whole years. More than 3 years. More than 1,000 days. And look, this is a difficult issue, obviously. This is a difficult issue. And what we have said is that Congress has to act, right? Congress, Democrats, Republicans have to act. But in those 3 years, it is true that Republicans have gotten in the way. They just have, Peter. They have consistently used immigration, the immigration system, the broken system, as a political stunt. That's what they've done. They've gotten in the way in trying to get more Border Patrol agents. They've gotten in the way in actually trying to fix what's happening, the challenges at the border. They did.
So
I mean, they voted. They've actually voted.
For the first 2 years, no response.
So Peter Doocy has a point. The spike in immigration levels was happening in that first year of Biden's presidency, where there was a united Democratic government, and there didn't seem to be a particular appetite to address it. I don't know if they thought that it was just a brief spike and that the trend would return more to the mean over time. Who knows what the thinking was, but it's also true that it's deeply cynical for Republicans with a much more conservative bill on the table now than ever would have been passed by a Democratic president with a Democratic House and Congress is now getting rejected by Republicans. And how can they sit there at the same time that you're trying to impeach Mayorkas for not enforcing the border while you're making the choice not to ratchet up the laws that are at his disposal to do exactly that?
A much more conservative bill because at the end of the day, Democratic leadership cares. The thing they care about the most is sending money to Ukraine. So they were willing to put a deeply conservative immigration bill on the table. It's an interesting situation. So the failed vote for the Mayorkas impeachment, so it was razor thin, just like 1 or 2 votes here, showing you, I mean, this is the trouble the House is in, where it's so closely split. Republicans have no margin for error on these kinds of things. Now, of course, even if they had voted to impeach Mayorkas, the Senate is not going to do the same. They're probably not even going to they're not even going to examine the issue, so it would have come to nothing. I did look up the last time a cabinet secretary faced an impeachment charge was in 1876. So it's been a while.
What did he do to earn that? Cane somebody?
Secretary of War William Belknap. I don't know what he did. We'd have to look it up.
Okay. I mean, well, look, what Mayorkas was supposed to have done, the articles he was charged with were willful and systematic refusal to comply with the law and enforcing border policy and breach of public trust. So again, I ask you, willful and systemic refusal to comply with the law. Here it is on a platter, Republicans, a big, beautiful law, a robust conservative law, a law that would fund ICE. Remember, we're coming off of an electoral season back in 2020 and 2018 where people like AOC were popularizing the phrase, abolish ICE, taking that now classic photo by the border, all in white, crying. This was a rising rallying cry from the Democratic Party and from progressives. This border bill has $7.6 billion of additional funding for ICE. Roughly $6 billion of that is for deportations in detention. That's more than the agency's entire annual enforcement budget. This is the kind of thing Republicans are no voting on.
See, but you keep saying it, and you're scaring me away from it. It's government funding for things, which I hate. I'm sorry, people. I just don't like your tax dollars being spent. It's like, oh,
well,
an increased budget for government employees?
That is not the argument that Republicans are making, and they can't make it because they have been arguing for exactly this kind of funding for years and years and years now. And I have to say, on the other side of this, a lot of progressives are really questioning what the argument is from the Democratic Party as to why they should now turn around and vote for Democrats as they're hollering from the rooftops.
Ukraine, that's the argument. Ukraine.
Well, no, I'm talking about progressives.
Oh, sure.
Progressives are saying, you spent the last election cycle telling me that I had to vote against Trump and against fascism because of the wall and the family separation and these draconian policies at the border. And now Joe Biden is crowing at the top of his lungs that he is the one that's put forward the most aggressive border policy in a generation and trying to get one-upmanship from Republicans for that. But this is entirely predictable because every single time Democrats move right in an effort to secure conservative, independent, conservative leading voters for their base, they have the effect of alienating their genuine base, progressives and people on the left, while not earning a single Republican vote, because why would you want Republican light when the real Republican Party is right there? And then when election day comes and your young voters and your black voters and your brown voters don't turn out for you, it becomes a blame game without any introspection or accountability.
Well, I don't know. I mean, they're looking at that. I hear what you're saying, but they're looking at that gap in who do you trust to handle the border, and Americans saying decisively, overwhelmingly, they trust Trump more than Biden on a couple of questions, the economy, other things, the border being a very big one, and saying we can't win unless we can get that number down. That's reflecting independents, moderates, swing voters in our key states. We got to get Trump's relative approval on border issues at a little bit more parity, or we're just done. There's no way we could possibly
That's one way
win.
to look at it. Another way to look at it is to say the reason that voters are prioritizing the border right now has to do with this spike in border crossings. It also has to do with the fact that Republicans are messaging on the border. What are Democrats messaging on?
Republicans are right, but they don't want to admit they're right.
You have the power of the pulpit and power of persuasion to help to. I'm not going to tell you that you are like actually changing what voters' priorities are, but to some extent, what the news focuses on does start to shift people's political priorities. And there's a world where you could say, look at all of these other affirmative things that the Democratic Party is going to offer, and alternatively, and in addition rather, offer a plan to address what's going on at the border that is not a conservative approach. That doesn't seem to be even on anybody's mind, that there is a humanitarian and more root cause-based plan to address these border crossings by actually talking about why there is such a spike in immigrants trying to leave their country in the first place. But that is nowhere in the national conversation, and Democrats have just decided to completely adopt Republicans' narrative without even for 1 week, 1 hour, 1 moment attempting to put forward their own. And to Ducey's point, they could have put forward an alternative narrative on immigration on day one when there was a united Congress in Joe Biden's benefit. They could have done it in year 2. They could have done it in year 3. And they could be doing it right now. But instead, there was this weird lack of confidence in their ability to actually pitch anything that's actually in line with their own ideals and good for the country. They're clearly terrified by the power of the MAGA persuasive machine, and they will bend the knee to it, and I don't think they'll be successful.
We shall see. More Rising right after this.